On my birthday, I got a text from Dad. Sold your guitar. Your brother needs a car. Be grateful we feed you. Then he added, also, you'll pay his loan, $6,000 by Friday. I said, no chance. He replied, then get out. You're cut off. So I left quietly. The next morning, they found what I left on the table. Now my brother's panicking, my mom's screaming, and my dad's calling every number he can. I woke up on my 19th birthday to the harsh buzz of my phone. My heart sank when I saw the message from Dad. No happy birthday. No hope it's a great day. Just a threat. You're going to pay your brother's car loan by Friday, or don't bother coming back home. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling that familiar weight settle in my chest. My little brother had just turned 16, and Dad had bought him a used Civic. Or so he said. Turns out, it wasn't a gift. It was a loan he expected me to pay off. I got up slowly, the way you do when you're bracing for something heavy. In the kitchen, Dad was already at the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. You see my text? He asked without looking up. Yeah, I said quietly. He finally glanced at me, eyes cold. Good. I already sold that guitar of yours to cover some of the loan. Figured you'd be grateful for what you've still got. Food. A roof. The guitar. I had been saving for that guitar for years, dreaming about the day I'd take it to music school in Nashville. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. You didn't have to do that. He laughed, like I'd told a joke. Sure I did. You owe it to the family. Don't act like you're too good for us. I didn't bother arguing. I had learned a long time ago that there was no point in fighting him. My brother, Josh, shuffled into the room, his hair still messy from sleep. He looked at me, then quickly looked away. No one said a word about it being my birthday. Dad leaned back in his chair. So? You got till Friday. Figure it out. I just nodded and turned to go back to my room. I didn't even pack right away. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the peeling posters on the wall, feeling like I'd woken up in someone else's life. It hit me then. They didn't see me as a son or a brother. I was just the kid who covered their bills, the kid who kept the lights on. My dreams didn't matter. My music school didn't matter. All that mattered was what I could do for them. So I started packing. Not the usual way, no messy piles or frantic tossing. Just what I needed, a couple of shirts, my worn-out sneakers, a battered notebook I'd scribbled songs in since I was 13. I left the rest behind. None of it felt like mine anymore. As I zipped up my duffel bag, Dad started in again from the kitchen, his voice dripping with fake concern. You're really gonna leave? You think you're too good for this family now? I didn't answer. I just walked out to the kitchen and put the folder on the table. Inside were my bank statements, my scholarship offer letters, and the signed declaration that said I was legally independent. I'd spent months putting it together in secret, knowing I'd need it someday. Dad didn't even touch the folder. He just stared at me, his face hard. You're making a big mistake, Kieran. Maybe, I said quietly. But it's mine to make. Josh hovered in the doorway, eyes wide, but he didn't say anything. I almost wished he would. I almost wished he'd ask me to stay, but he didn't. So I picked up my bag and walked out the door. No goodbyes. No second guesses. Just the sound of my feet on the cracked driveway and the knowledge that I wasn't coming back. That was how my birthday ended, with a folder on the table and the feeling that, for the first time, I was choosing myself over them. Alex's place was nothing fancy, a one-bedroom apartment over a pizza joint in downtown St. Louis. The floor creaked every time you shifted your weight, and the smell of pepperoni was permanent. But that first night, it felt like a palace. I dropped my bag by the door and just stood there for a minute, letting the quiet wash over me. No Dad barking orders. No Josh looking at me like I was supposed to fix everything. Just quiet. Alex flopped down on the couch and cracked open a can of cheap beer. You sure you're okay? He asked, his voice soft in a way that didn't match his messy hair and ripped jeans. I nodded, even though I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't expect to feel like this. Like what? He asked. I sat down on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees. Like it's too quiet, you know? All my life, there's always been something. Bills, fights, Dad yelling about money. Now it's just gone. Alex didn't say anything. He just reached over and nudged my shoulder with his knuckles. You're allowed to breathe, Kieran. That's what this is. Breathing. I tried to believe that. But that night, as I lay on the air mattress Alex had set up in the corner, I kept waiting for my phone to buzz. I half expected to hear Dad's voice, even though I'd blocked his number. Instead, all I could hear was the faint hum of the pizza ovens downstairs and the cars whooshing by on the street below. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying Dad's words. You owe it to the family. Like I was some ATM, not a person. I stared at the water-stained ceiling, wondering if I'd ever stop feeling like I was supposed to go back and fix it all. Morning came too soon. The sun streamed in through the broken blinds, and I finally drifted off for a couple of hours. When I woke up, Alex was already in the kitchen, pouring cereal into mismatched mugs because he didn't own real bowls. "Morning," he said, pushing one of the mugs toward me. "You looked like you needed the extra sleep." I took a sip of the stale cereal and nodded. "Thanks for letting me crash here." "Don't mention it," he said, waving me off. "But just so you know, your dad's been calling everyone. He even called my mom this morning." I froze, the spoon halfway to my mouth. "What did he say?" Alex leaned against the counter, arms folded. "He's telling everyone you ran off. That you stole money and ditched your brother. My mom's not buying it, but he's panicking." I looked down at the cereal, my stomach turning. "Figures. I left that folder, though. They know the truth." Alex nodded. "Yeah, but your dad doesn't care about the truth. He cares about control." That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I took a deep breath and set the mug down. "I can't go back, Alex. Not even to explain." "Good," he said firmly. "Because you don't owe them anything anymore." There was a long pause. I thought about Josh, about how he looked at me that morning, not with anger, but like he didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to reach out, to explain that this wasn't his fault. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, scrolled through the blocked messages. I didn't open them. Just seeing the notification bubble was enough. Dad was losing his mind because, for once, he couldn't make me do what he wanted. I looked up at Alex, and for the first time since I walked out, I felt something like hope. "I think I'm gonna be okay," I said quietly. Alex grinned. "Damn right you are." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. It was late that night when Alex's phone lit up like a Christmas tree. The first message came from a mutual friend, then another, and another. Everyone had a different story, but the common thread was clear. My parents were spinning tales faster than they could keep up with. Alex held up his phone, eyebrows raised. "Dude, your mom is telling everyone you stole her savings and took off." I let out a bitter laugh. "Of course she is. That's easier than admitting the truth." "She even texted me," Alex said, scrolling through his screen. "Said you were always a selfish kid, and she should have known you'd leave them high and dry." I didn't even flinch. "She's just trying to save face. She knows what's in that folder." Alex nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine. "You're not gonna respond, are you?" "No," I said, my voice calm. "Let them talk. I've spent too long trying to prove I'm not what they say I am. I'm done playing that game." I pulled out my own phone and opened the small online community chat I'd been a part of for years, a place full of people like me, kids who'd grown up in families that didn't really want them, except for what they could give. I uploaded the redacted copies of the documents I'd left behind, my bank statements, the scholarship offer, the signed Declaration of Independence. Just the facts. No commentary, no drama, just the truth. A few minutes later, the responses started rolling in. People I barely knew sent messages of quiet support, words like "finally" and "you're free now." For the first time in my life, I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy. Like maybe I wasn't the selfish one. A ping came through from Sophia, my cousin. We hadn't talked much in years. She'd always believed whatever mom and dad told her. But now she sent a simple message through a friend. I saw the folder. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." I stared at that message for a long time. I thought about how Sophia used to parrot my parents' lines, telling me I was the golden child because I was smart, because I could fix everything. She'd never questioned how much that pressure cost me. I looked up at Alex, who was sprawled out on the couch, his legs dangling off the armrest. "Sophia says she's sorry," I said quietly. Alex's eyes softened. "That's something, man. That's a start." I nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Yeah, it is." The rest of the night passed in a blur of quiet conversation and half-finished cups of coffee. Outside, the city moved on without me, the lights of downtown flickering in the distance. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be the good son, the good brother, the kid who never said no, even when it broke me. Now, I realized, my silence wasn't weakness. It was power. Every word I didn't say, every message I didn't respond to, that was me taking my life back, one moment at a time. By the time the sun started to rise, I knew one thing for sure. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. My family could spin their stories. They could lie all they wanted. But the truth was already out there, and I was done letting them define me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all slip off my shoulders. This was the first time in my life I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet, not because someone told me to, but because I chose to. And that, I thought as I watched the first light of dawn break over the city skyline, was more powerful than any apology or explanation could ever be. A couple of weeks later, I stood in the doorway of my new dorm room. It was nothing special, a tiny single with a cracked window and an old heater that rattled like a dying fan. But it was mine. No one telling me what I owed them, no one yelling at me to pick up the slack. Just 4 walls and a chance to start over. I set my duffel bag on the floor and took a deep breath. This wasn't the life I'd planned when I was younger. I'd imagined a fancy apartment in Nashville, a music degree under my belt, maybe even a record deal. But for now, I was just Kieran, 19 and free. The mattress was basically a sheet of foam on the floor, and the pots and pans I'd scored from a thrift store were dented and mismatched. But when I looked around, I didn't see the flaws. I saw a place that belonged to me. I spent the first couple of days filling out paperwork with student housing, getting everything in order. The lady at the desk, Mrs. Davenport, had kind eyes and a way of talking that made you feel like you weren't just another name on a list. Food vouchers come in on the first of the month, she said, sliding a small envelope across the desk. And if you ever need to talk to someone about anything, my door's open. Thanks, I said quietly, my fingers curling around the envelope. I didn't trust kindness anymore, but I wanted to. I spent hours in the small student aid office, too. They helped me sort out the legal stuff, how to protect my independence, how to make sure my parents couldn't lay a claim on anything. I didn't tell them the full story. I didn't have to. They'd seen it all before. One night, I called the Scholarship Foundation, let them know I'd moved out and was living on my own now. The woman on the other end didn't ask questions. She just said, "We're here for you, Kieran. Don't let them take this away from you." I hung up, feeling a little like maybe the world wasn't such a terrible place after all. On a rainy Thursday, I filed the police report about my guitar. It wasn't about getting it back. I knew Dad had probably sold it to the first pawn shop that offered him cash. But it mattered to me, just like it mattered to show my family that their choices had consequences. The officer who took my statement looked me in the eye and said, "I'm sorry. That was yours. And that matters." I walked back to the dorm, the rain soaking through my jacket. My shoes squelched with every step, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, every step was mine alone. In the evenings, I'd sit on my floor with a cheap guitar I'd borrowed from the music room downstairs. My fingers still remembered the chords, the way the strings bit into my skin. The music wasn't perfect, it never had been, but it was honest. And for now, that was enough. I lay down on the foam mattress that night, my head spinning with the quiet of it all. No demands, no insults. Just me and the distant hum of the campus generators. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was just filling a space someone else had carved out for me. I was building something of my own, even if it was just a small room and a secondhand guitar. And as I drifted off to sleep, I thought, maybe this is what freedom really feels like. A couple of months had passed since I moved out, and the silence from my family had been almost as loud as the chaos before. But it didn't last forever. Word spread fast in our small town, and it wasn't long before the rumors started to trickle back to me. Alex was the one who told me first. He came home from work one night, kicked off his shoes, and said, "You hear about your folks?" I looked up from the guitar I was playing. "What about them?" "Their landlord's not renewing the lease," Alex said, his voice careful. "He found out about the money they took from you. Said he doesn't want trouble like that in his building." I set the guitar down, my fingers still tingling. "Good," I said softly. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and it felt like a stone dropping into a still pond. A few days later, I got a letter from Mom. Not a text, not a call. An actual letter, the kind she'd never bothered to send before. It was full of guilt and soft words, the kind that always seemed to say one thing, but meant another. "Kieran, we're so sorry for everything that happened. Things have been hard here. We might lose the house. Josh is worried sick. Please, just send a little money so we can keep the lights on. We're still your family, and family helps each other. Love, Mom." I read it twice, then set it on the table. My hands didn't shake, not like they used to. I saved a copy, a habit I learned from all those years of covering bills and covering up, and then I tossed the letter in the trash. That same night, one of Josh's friends texted me, saying he was real upset, and that I was ruining everything. I didn't respond. I'd already said everything I needed to say. I thought about Josh a lot. He was just a kid, barely 16, stuck in the middle of a storm he didn't make. Part of me wanted to call him, to tell him I understood. But I knew that if I picked up the phone, I'd end up trying to fix things again. And I couldn't do that. Not for them. The realization hit me hard one night as I lay on my mattress, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars someone had stuck on the ceiling years before. My family wasn't just losing me. They were losing the story they'd built around me, the one where I was the safety net, the fixer, the ATM. They'd never really wanted me. They'd wanted what I could do for them. I rolled over and closed my eyes, letting the quiet settle around me like a blanket. It was the first time in a long time that I didn't feel responsible for someone else's happiness. I didn't belong to them anymore. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a choice. A few weeks later, Alex and I were sitting on the couch, splitting a cheap pizza and watching some mindless TV show when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then looked at me, his mouth tightening. "It's your dad," he said, his voice low. "He showed up at my work today." My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to stay still. "What did he want?" Alex shrugged, but I could see the anger in his eyes. He was all smiles at first. "Said he just wanted to talk to you. Said he missed you." He paused, his jaw clenching. Then he started asking me how much you're paying for rent, how much money you've got saved. Like he thought he could just muscle his way back in. I felt that old heat in my chest, the one that used to make me feel small. But this time, it just made me tired. What did you say? Alex leaned back, his face hard. I told him to leave. He started getting loud, so security walked him out. He didn't like that. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to picture Dad's face. The smug smile he wore when he thought he had the upper hand. The way he could flip from calm to raging in a second flat. This is his last shot, I said quietly. He's losing everything he built his life around. Me. Alex reached over and clapped me on the shoulder. He's not getting it back, Kieran. You know that, right? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. That night, lying in bed, I thought about all the times Dad had taught me to keep my head down. Don't make waves, he'd always say. Family sticks together, no matter what. And I believed him. I believed it was my job to swallow every insult, every demand, just to keep the peace. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I was done being quiet because it kept him comfortable. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I didn't even have to open it to know who it was. We need to talk. You're making a mistake. I stared at the message for a long moment, then hit delete without reading the rest. Dad's last attempt wasn't going to change anything. He was trying to reclaim the control he'd lost, but I'd already learned the most important lesson of my life. My silence didn't mean I was weak. It meant I was done giving him the satisfaction of a fight. I rolled out of bed and stretched, the morning sun cutting through the blinds. My room was still small, still plain, but it felt like home. And that was more than I'd ever had with him. I didn't need to yell or prove myself anymore. My refusal to play his game, to even acknowledge it, was all the power I needed. I was free. And for once, that felt like enough. It was early April when I finally felt like I could breathe. The city was starting to shake off the winter chill, the air fresh in a way that made me want to sit outside and just let the sun soak into my skin. A month had passed since Dad's last stunt at Alex's job. Since then, there'd been nothing. No calls. No messages. No surprise visits. It was like they'd finally realized I was gone for good. I settled into my routine, one small piece at a time. Classes in the morning. Work in the afternoon at the campus library, stacking books and helping students find articles. Evenings were for cheap dinners in my dorm and strumming the battered guitar I'd borrowed from the music department. There were no birthday parties or family dinners, no one expecting me to be anything but who I was. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. I'd stopped checking my phone for messages from home. I knew they'd still be telling their version of the story, twisting it into something that made them look blameless. But it didn't bother me like it used to. I'd stopped caring if they believed I was a monster, or if they convinced everyone else that I was just a selfish kid who walked out. Because the truth was, they never really knew me. They never saw the kid who spent nights trying to figure out how to cover Josh's braces or keep the electricity from getting shut off. They never saw the songs I wrote in the dark, the dreams I kept to myself because there was never enough air in that house for my voice to matter. They never saw me. And they never would. One afternoon, I sat by the campus fountain with my notebook in my lap. The air was warm and smelled like spring. I closed my eyes and let the quiet fill me up, let it settle in my bones like I'd always been waiting for it. This was what freedom felt like, not running or hiding, but being still. Choosing peace over chaos. Choosing myself over the version of me they'd always wanted to shape. I flipped through the pages of my notebook, filled with half-finished lyrics and random thoughts. My handwriting was messy, lines scribbled out and rewritten a dozen times. But it was mine. All of it. I didn't know what would come next, if I'd stay in this city, if I'd get that music degree, if I'd ever see Josh again. But for the first time, I wasn't scared of not knowing. Because no matter what, I knew this. I'd already won. I'd broken free of a story that was never mine. And I was done letting them write the ending. As the sun started to dip behind the library, I closed my notebook and leaned back against the fountain wall, smiling a little to myself. I didn't just leave them behind. I left behind the person they told me I had to be. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly who I wanted to be, Kieran. No apologies. No regrets. And that was enough.